It was the kind of story that had everyone in the basketball world leaning in a little closer, their eyes widening, their voices dropping to a murmur. Lexie Hall, an Indiana Fever player known for her sharp play and level-headed approach on the court, was reportedly leaking some eyebrow-raising details about none other than Caitlin Clark. Clark, a dazzling college basketball standout whose moves are as sharp as her trash talk, has been a polarizing figure in the sport. In an unexpected twist, rumors began to swirl that there were some juicy behind-the-scenes dynamics within the Fever locker room involving Hall, Clark, and a simmering pot of drama that no one saw coming. But before we proceed further, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe. Lexie Hall is usually a player who seems content to let her performance on the court do the talking. She's not one to court controversy or indulge in drama, which made this story all the more surprising. If you'd asked anyone in the Fever organization to pick the last person who would leak locker room secrets, Hall's name would probably have topped that list. But sometimes the quiet ones are the ones who surprise you most, and boy, did she surprise everyone with these revelations. So, what did Hall have to say? The specifics were murky at first, but what quickly emerged was that Hall was less than impressed by the star-studded reputation Caitlin Clark brought with her. Clark had made her name as a scoring machine and a trash-talking queen who wasn't afraid to go head-to-head with anyone on the court. Her swagger, while entertaining to fans, could be abrasive to those who had to share the locker room with her, and Hall, it seemed, was more than willing to pull back the curtain on Clark's backstage persona. Clark, as many basketball fans know, doesn't exactly come across as the modest type. Her confidence borders on cockiness, a quality that earns her as many critics as it does fans. On the court, she's a sensation, training three-pointers with an ease that leaves defenders scratching their heads and slamming the ball to the floor with a little extra spice. Off the court, however, that confidence could come off as intimidating, even obnoxious, especially to teammates who didn't share her bravado or agree with her larger-than-life presence. Hall's comments painted a picture of a locker room divided. According to her, Clark's presence was disruptive, almost like a bull in a china shop. Hall wasn't shy in her implication that Clark's confidence sometimes crossed the line, turning into a force that the Fever team found difficult to contain. She described how Clark's larger-than-life personality could fill the entire room, leaving little space for the quieter players, and how her intense competitiveness could turn even the lightest team scrimmage into a do-or-die battle. One incident, which quickly gained traction among fans and analysts alike, involved a heated exchange between Clark and another player. Hall claimed that a simple disagreement over a practice drill spiraled into a tense standoff, with Clark refusing to back down on the other player, usually mild-mannered, digging in her heels. Hall's recounting of the scene was almost comical, with Clark insisting on doing things her way, even as the coaching staff watched on with thinly veiled exasperation. Clark's refusal to compromise was both impressive and infuriating, Hall admitted, with a tone that suggested she admired Clark's tenacity but was also exhausted by it. For Clark, who had always thrived on the attention her flashy moods and strong personality brought, Hall's comments were a challenge to her tightly controlled public image. Fans knew Clark as a fearless competitor, the kind who could trash-talk the best of them and then back it up with her performance. But Hall was providing a peek behind the curtain, one that suggested Clark's fire wasn't always as inspiring as it's seen from the stands. To some teammates, it seemed to burn too hot, singing anyone who dared to get too close. The broader implications of Hall's leaks extended beyond the Fever's locker room. Here was a respected player calling out a star in a way that suggested real friction within the team. It raised questions about how a superstar's attitude and approach could affect the delicate balance of team dynamics. Clark's drive and intensity were the things that made her a superstar, but Hall's revelations hinted that they might also be the very things that could alienate her from those around her. The fine line between confidence and cockiness, between leadership and domination, was suddenly at the forefront of the discussion. The dynamic between Hall and Clark had become a flashpoint, not just for Fever fans, but for the entire basketball community. Clark's no-nonsense, take-no-prisoner style clashed with Hall's more restrained approach, making them an odd pair in the locker room. According to Hall, Clark's intensity made it difficult for others to voice their opinions, creating an atmosphere that felt less collaborative and more dictatorial. Clark was like the sun, powerful and all-consuming, but Hall and other teammates struggled to find their place in the orbit without getting burned. Hall's details went beyond just personality clashes. She touched on specific moments that painted a picture of a player who was unyielding in her ways. One story involved a pre-game ritual where Clark, oblivious to the rest of the team, took up an entire corner of the locker room with her gear, leaving little room for anyone else. Hall described the scene with a hint of amusement, almost as if she couldn't believe how much space Clark thought she needed. It was a minor incident, but it highlighted a broader theme: Clark's tendency to center herself in any situation, intentionally or not. For the Fever organization, Hall's revelations posed a unique challenge. They had brought in Clark to add a spark to the team, to infuse it with the kind of high-octane energy she was known for. But Hall's stories suggested that the spark might be a bit too volatile, that Clark's flame could singe the team if not properly managed. The Fever had to find a way to balance Clark's undeniable talent with the need for team cohesion, a task easier said than done. Hall's comments also spurred a broader discussion in the basketball world about the nature of leadership. Clark had always been a leader, both in terms of her stats and her presence, but Hall's details suggested that leadership wasn't always about being the loudest or most assertive person in the room. Hall's words hinted at a quiet resilience, a form of leadership that didn't need to dominate to make its presence felt. In her own understated way, Hall was standing up to Clark, showing that leadership could take many forms, and that sometimes the quietest voice in the room had the most to say. As the story spread, fans began to take sides. Clark's loyal supporters argued that her intensity was part of what made her a star, that her competitive drive was what fueled her success and inspired her teammates to step up their game. Hall's supporters, meanwhile, praised her for standing up for a more balanced, respectful team environment. The debate highlighted the different ways fans interpreted the same qualities, seeing either brilliance or arrogance depending on their perspective. What made Hall's revelations even more intriguing was her own personality. She wasn't known for stirring the pot, yet here she was, adding spices and flavors that no one expected. Some speculated that maybe Hall had reached her limit, that she'd been dealing with Clark's larger-than-life presence for too long, and finally felt compelled to speak out. Others wondered if Hall saw herself as the voice of reason, the one person willing to keep Clark's ego in check for the good of the team. But beyond the drama, Hall's comments also reflected a truth about sports, that building a team is about more than just stacking up talent. The Fever had assembled a roster filled with potential, but Hall's words hinted that they still had work to do in figuring out how all those pieces fit together. Talent alone couldn't solve the tension in the locker room, and for all of Clark's scoring ability, there were still question marks about whether her approach was conducive to long-term success. In a way, Hall's revelations forced everyone, from fans to analysts to players, to confront the reality that talent alone doesn't make a team. Chemistry, humility, and balance all play their part, and Hall's account of Clark's behavior suggested that these qualities were in short supply. The Fever, it seemed, had some soul-searching to do if they'd wanted to make the most of the talent on their roster. The question wasn't just whether Clark could score, it was whether she could lead, and Hall's comments cast doubt on that in a way that few anticipated. The tension between Hall and Clark wasn't just a clash of personalities, it was a clash of philosophies. Clark's brand of leadership was loud and intense, commanding attention and demanding results. Hall's approach was more subdued, focused on the collective over the individual, on harmony over dominance. Both styles had their merits, but Hall's revelations suggested that Clark's approach might be testing the limits of what the Fever locker room could handle. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more engaging content. We thrive on your feedback, so be sure to leave your thoughts in the comments section below. Until next time, keep discovering and stay tuned.